We have all been waiting for so long to legitimately watch Aaron Rodgers play for the Jets. The hype for 2 straight off seasons has been off the charts, and how could it not be? We're talking about a 4-time NFL MVP who was literally traded to a team that's arguably a quarterback away from being a serious contender. It was supposed to be one of the biggest storylines last season, but it wasn't, and the Jets now get a redo. In the exact same way, the Jets faced off on Monday Night Football to start the year with Aaron Rodgers. But this time around, it looked a little bit different. Not only did Rodgers not get hurt, but the Jets actually lost this one. The 49ers were too much and dominated 32-19. That was a really long wait for the Jets just to lose, and Aaron Rodgers didn't even play the last drive. It ended up being Tyrod Taylor because the game was pretty much over at that point. The Jets just weren't coming back, and it ended up being a really disappointing game. But first, thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. Football is back. The season is kicking off, and it's the perfect time to dive right into the action with our partners over at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will get $250 in bonus bets instantly and NFL Plus Premium. That's something that we can all celebrate. So yes, that's $250 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 on any wager and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. You can then use those bonus bets to bet on anytime touchdowns on DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on anytime touchdowns. If sports betting isn't available in your state just yet, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers who use our promo code JDPROD and bet just $5 on any wager will get $250 in bonus bets instantly and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. That's promo code JDPROD only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Thank you again to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. Let's get right back to it. The Aaron Rodgers era for the Jets has really just been a drama-filled mess up until now. Rodgers was absolutely incredible on the Packers for a very long time. He won a Super Bowl and was a top quarterback in the league without a doubt, but he is older now. Rodgers is now 40 years old and was really traded away so that the Packers can move on to Jordan Love. And I will say, the move did make a ton of sense for both parties at the time. Green Bay was heading towards a sort of retool with young talent, and at some point, they did have to play Jordan Love. And to be able to get something back for an aging quarterback is always a win. As for the Jets, they didn't have to give up too much for a guy who could potentially come in and play at an MVP level. Now, that didn't end up happening, and we'll never know just how good Rodgers could have been for the Jets in 2023. If you remember, that whole offseason was just a really weird one for Rodgers. At one point, it sounded like he was going to retire and potentially become the new host of Jeopardy, and then he went on this insane darkness retreat only to come back and decide that he did want to continue to play and was traded to the Jets. And after an entire offseason of Hard Knocks hyping this team up and creating excitement and wonder about just how good Rodgers was going to be for the Jets, he tore his Achilles on the first drive. Rodgers ran out with the American flag to a massive crowd only for it to be over within a minute. Now, somehow, someway, the Jets still managed to win anyways with Zach Wilson at quarterback, but that meant that suddenly Wilson was the starter. And it really did feel like that was the last thing that the Jets wanted. They quite literally traded for Rodgers just to replace him. He was a complete bust as the 2nd overall pick and just didn't work out. The Jets ended up not being that good, even though the defense still found ways to win games. And now Wilson is gone. He was traded to the Broncos in the offseason, and the Jets went on to bring in Tyrod Taylor. So at the very least, there is a good, capable backup now. Now, the hype during this past offseason certainly wasn't the same as last offseason, but there was still the wonder of what the Jets would look like with a good quarterback behind center. The defense lost some pieces, but was still expected to be great, and with playmakers like Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers was set up well. But of course, it was Allen Lazard, who had 89 yards and 2 touchdowns on Sunday. Because of course it was Lazard, who Rodgers essentially brought with him to New York. There really isn't anything much worse than a letdown after an entire offseason of excitement and hope. And that's what week 1 was for Jets fans. There really weren't any moments in this game where it felt like the Jets looked like contenders. Now, I will say late in the first quarter, the Jets did take the lead 7-3, and some fans got a little too excited, but that all turned around fast. Even though the 49ers stalled out in the red zone literally all game and just couldn't finish, it didn't end up mattering. The Jets were still down 32-13 by the time Rodgers was replaced with Tyrod. It was a completely disappointing outcome after just so much hype. Rodgers went 13 of 21 for 167 yards and a touchdown with a rare interception, and Brees had 54 yards with a touchdown. Brock Purdy had 231 yards, but the story was really Jordan Mason. Christian McCaffrey was out, which wasn't exactly a good sign for those who took him number 1 in fantasy. But Mason came in and he dominated with 147 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Shanahan had him carry the ball 28 times. He was literally McCaffrey in this game, and he looked great. It felt like the Jets just couldn't stop the run game all night. So not only was there the frustration of the lack of Jets offense and not being able to move the ball well enough, but the defense also couldn't stop the Niners either. It really was a disappointing display all around. But then again, it is week 1. And here's the good news. The Jets now get to face off against the Titans on the road, Patriots, Broncos, and Vikings. So not exactly the toughest schedule in the world coming up. And it should give Rodgers enough time to figure everything out. Because after all, it has been a while since he's played an entire game. At the very least, the offense looked more competent with Aaron Rodgers compared to Zach Wilson. And it was really good to see Rodgers finally out there. And how about that free play 36-yard touchdown to Allen Lazard? If Rodgers is going to do anything during a game, it's getting a free play touchdown. Rodgers did have an interception, but I'll give him a little bit of slack here. It was a deflection, but I'm not exactly sure what happened with the Jets because Rodgers was hitting Garrett Wilson early on, and then he just stopped getting targets. Mike Williams was non-existent, and Tyler Conklin also had no targets. There was a lot more to be desired, and the Jets' defensive front wasn't nearly as good as it should have been. So maybe not having Hassan Reddick is making a bigger difference than expected. Reddick is still holding out, and maybe the bad performance from the line should be a push for his return. It also hurts not having Bryce Huff there. He's gone now to the Eagles. The Jets traded for Reddick, and now he's not even playing, and it sounds like the Jets actually need him. Granted, I will say, taking on the 49ers is certainly not an easy task, especially in week 1. San Francisco has been just so good for the past while now. Kyle Shanahan is a straight-up genius, and it's clear that the 49ers are still a juggernaut. I think the big question now is if Brock Purdy is good enough. A lot of people are questioning now if he's actually the answer, but lucky for him, the offense is loaded. It helps to get back Brandon Ayuk and even Juwan Jennings, who looked really good. Deebo Samuel is still there too, and so is George Kittle. It's just loaded. And even Jordan Mason kept the ball rolling without Christian McCaffrey out there. The 49ers are no joke again. If Purdy can just play at a high level, the 49ers are going to be Super Bowl favorites again. But we knew that. The question is whether or not the Jets can get into the discussion at all with Aaron Rodgers. It definitely wasn't going to happen last season with Zach Wilson, but the long-awaited return for Rodgers is here. And we're going to see if the 40-year-old coming off of a torn Achilles can really lead the Jets to the Super Bowl.